Something in music that has always fascinated me was the alter ego. For decades now, countless musicians have created and released music under completely new personas. Whether it be because they want to try something new musically, or generate attention for a new album, or because they're, well, a weirdo, a ton of musicians have done it. It really is astonishing to see how many different artists across so many different genres have all come to the same conclusion that an alter ego is what made sense. But for 27 years, there's been one that I cannot stop thinking about. In 1999, one of the biggest and most recognizable artists in the world cast aside his own name and revealed to the world a new persona, complete with a bizarre backstory and surprising new sound. And believe it or not, I'm not talking about Chris Gaines. Which is weird because even in my regular life, I am frequently talking about Chris Gaines. Like how in his Fake Behind the Music episode, they spent all this effort to talk about how his albums were in the 80s, but the Billboard charts they show are clearly from the 90s, and I'm doing it again, sorry. The subject of today's video is actually a little bit weirder, as it's the story of a Backstreet Boy turned British criminal. This is Pop Culture Hyperfixations, and this is the story of Johnny No Name. Today's video is sponsored by KristenSt.Cat.com. Full transparency, I may be a little biased because this is my girlfriend's small business, but as far as I'm concerned, it's the premier destination for dumb stuff made by a shoddy internet artist. And don't get mad at me, that's her quote, not mine. She's got stickers, pens, keychains, and more, and enter the promo code PCH at checkout for 15% off your next purchase. Remember, shop small and shop stupid at KristenSt.Cat.com. Now, back to the video. Our story begins in Orlando, Florida, way back in the early 90s, with a kid named AJ McLean. From a young age, he developed an interest in performing, and although his singing would be what eventually made him famous, it was his skills as an actor that first got him noticed. He got a few small parts, including a role in the pilot for the short-lived Nickelodeon show Hi Honey I'm Home, where he played the bad boy skunk, and oh my god, that is the raddest kid ever. Nickelodeon Studios ran out of Orlando at the time, which is also why he got to live out one of my childhood dreams and compete on Guts. Although sadly, he did not end up walking away with a glowing piece of the radical rock. But the sadness of not conquering the aggro crag is probably mitigated by what happened later that year, when McLean saw an ad in the Orlando Sentinel looking for male teenage singers to form a New Kids on the Block type group. It was at that meeting where he met an alleged business mogul named Lou Pearlman, and AJ McLean became the very first member of a musical group that would later be known as the Backstreet Boys. The group, consisting of AJ, Brian, Kevin, Howie, and Nick, didn't have success right away, as America wasn't really clamoring to do the New Kids dance all over again. Instead, they spent most of their early years in Europe, where they garnered massive success, before they finally broke in America in 1997 with their debut album, Backstreet Boys, which was actually a combo of their two European albums, which partially explains why it has such a murderous row of hit songs, including Everybody's Backstreet Back, As Long As You Love Me, and Quit Playing Games With My Heart. The band quickly became massive in the US, as seen by this clip here. Yeah, that familiar sound of teenage girls losing their fucking minds would follow the band wherever they went. And as someone who came of age during that era, I can confirm that they were an absolute cultural force with girls my age. Their second album in the US, Millennium, was somehow even more massive. It not only went triple platinum, but the tour promoting the album did $30 million in ticket sales on the first day. They were just one of those bands you couldn't escape. They were pretty much everywhere, all the time. And then at the peak of their popularity, something curious happened. There was suddenly a report out there that AJ McLean was going to be the first of the Backstreet Boys to perform a solo show. Except he wouldn't be doing it as AJ McLean, he'd be doing it as Johnny Suede? Okay, not that one, but we'll circle back to that. The story behind the show is simple enough. During a break from the Millennium Tour, AJ realized he had never performed on his birthday, and with his 22nd one coming up, he thought it'd be a fun way to celebrate. Rather than trying to organize the other members of the group, who were all enjoying the brief respite from the grind that was touring, he would do a solo show, he'd do it in his hometown of Orlando, he'd do it to benefit VH1 Save the Music Foundation, and he'd even do it under an alias. That alias was Johnny Suede, a British bad boy from Tennessee, and yeah, I know how weird that sentence sounds, and came from a bit AJ would do with some of the backup band members from the tour. He hadn't acted since the Backstreet Boys started, so we thought it might be a fun way to exercise those muscles again. The name itself had nothing to do with the Brad Pitt movie, which I don't think AJ had ever even seen, but rather a jacket he bought that said Johnny Suede, dressed to pimp. He liked it so much he even used it as his fake name when he checked into hotels, but the makers of the jacket did not care for AJ's fandom. They were disgusted that a Backstreet Boy was using their name, as it went against what they thought their brand identity was. They thought his endorsement made the brand less cool, and they threatened legal action, although they never actually went through with it. Who did go through with some legal action was the writer and director of the film Johnny Suede, Tom DeCillo, who basically told McLean that in order to continue using the name, they would need to come to some sort of financial arrangement. By that point, the show was already promoted and sold out, so DeCillo allowed a one-time use, which meant those who were lucky enough to pay the $15 to get into the Hard Rock Cafe at Universal Studios City Walk in Orlando on January 9, 2000, got to see the one and only performance of Johnny Suede. Unfortunately, very little footage of the concert exists, but what we do know from the reports about it is that he played almost exclusively cover songs, stay tuned for more of that later on, that fellow Backstreet Boy Brian Luttrell made an appearance, and that the concert raised $37,000 for the Save the Music Foundation. Buoyed by the success of the show, AJ decided it was time to bring Johnny across America, but he needed a new name. Or maybe what he actually needed was no name. With that, not only was Johnny No Name introduced, but so was his lore. God, I love lore. In conjunction with Save the Music, AJ also launched the J&N Foundation, which not only helped fund school music programs, but also put money towards diabetes research. The website they set up revealed most of Johnny's backstory, including that after falling with a bad crowd and being sent to jail due to mistaken identity, he had spent basically the rest of his life in and out of prison. It does not explain how he grew up in Nashville but still maintained a British accent, but did explain that his grandfather, uncle, and even dog all had diabetes, which admittedly I thought sounded crazy, until I found out that is literally AJ McLean's backstory. Further articles also fleshed out the Johnny No Name backstory, who is described as being in a constant state of probation. My favorite one of them features a reporter asking Johnny, what presidential appointment did he think he'd be most suited for, to which Johnny No Name replied, the Secretary of Sex Education. Johnny rarely sat down for televised interviews, but lucky for us, MTV reporter Chris Connolly was able to speak with him, and I think give us the clearest idea of what Johnny No Name was all about.
Now, does Johnny get the same kind of fanatic fan base that AJ does? Is there screaming? Is there this nodding from the back here? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There's lots of screaming, lots of craziness, you know. Take it from him, you know, he's
wild crazy.
Wild and crazy, yeah, right.
Panties?
Actually, a lot more panties than you know Backstreet gets. I get all the good panties.
Johnny gets more panties?
I get more thongs. You know? I get the thong.
In case it doesn't go without saying, the Johnny character was pretty tongue-in-cheek. This was happening at the same time as the previously mentioned Chris Gaines, so while people were initially worried AJ was going full method actor, it was pretty obvious early on that he was just doing a goof. He would give interviews and talk about Johnny like he was a different person, but a lot of it was done with a wink and a nod. When asked by the Orlando Sentinel why Johnny and AJ were never seen together at the same time, he said, because no one would be able to survive all the testosterone in the same place at the same time. I do wonder where the rebellious nature of Johnny No Name actually came from. Anyone who's watched MTV's Together knows every boy band member fills an archetype, and AJ was clearly the bad boy of the Backstreet Boys. So I do wonder if he was sort of riffing on that, or given the dark path he would eventually go down, if this was him trying to work through some of the stuff bubbling inside him. I mean, the likely true answer is he just thought it'd be fun to do a silly accent, but if you don't expect me to psychoanalyze a barely remembered alter ego that played a handful of shows 26 years ago, then I don't know what you want from me, man. Speaking of those shows, a small tour was announced for March of 2000 that would see Johnny performing in New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles, which is where, lucky for us, some hero snuck a camcorder in and gave us almost all the glorious Johnny footage you see in the video. The footage of that concert reveals what truly makes Johnny No Name so interesting, which is that his set list is batshit crazy. Oh, don't believe me? Well, here he is singing Killing in the Name of by Rage Against the Machine. I never in my life would have expected to hear that many teenagers screaming about Rage Against the Machine. Back then, the only teenager I ever heard scream about them was me. When I was telling everyone that part in Sleep Now on the Fire when Zach De La Rocha goes, the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa, Maria was the dumbest shit ever. But I'm a Limp Bizkit guy, so what do I know? Say what you will about AJ McLean, but he certainly had better musical taste than me, as the Johnny No Name setlist shows. He mixed in some Backstreet Boys songs, but for the most part the show consisted of covers of not only Rage Against the Machine, but George Thorogood, the Commodores, Brian McKnight, Tonic, and the f***ing Stone Temple Pilots. Unfortunately, we don't have a full video of the STP performance, but someone did record the audio from another show, so let's just pretend the audio matches the visual. As the Johnny No Name project grew, so did speculation that this would lead to AJ leaving the group. The history of pop groups is rife with examples of members attempting to go solo, and with the shocking departure of Jerry Halliwell from the Spice Girls fresh on everyone's mind, there was real fear that AJ was about to become the next Ginger. McLean denied those rumors, and the entire time was adamant he was just having fun. History would prove him correct, as Nick Carter would be the first Backstreet Boy to release a solo album, but he never really left the group, so I don't know if it counts. The project didn't last long, as Johnny No Name was quietly retired as AJ's bad boy persona became far too real. In 2001, he would check himself into rehab for drug and alcohol addiction, but would return to the group shortly after. The Backstreet Boys themselves would have a few more successful years, but would eventually see their fame diminish as musical taste changed. But those teen girls from the 90s became adults in the 2010s, and now the group's still packing crowds all across the world. As for AJ, while he has had his struggles and a few relapses, he is currently sober. He did finally get around to releasing a solo album in 2010 called Have It All, and released another album this year under his real name, Alexander James. Believe it or not, a lot of people don't ask him about Johnny No Name, but when they do, he looks back on it fondly, talking about how much fun it was, and always teasing the idea that the project might not be dead. I think I speak for all of us when I say this, AJ. Quit playing games with our hearts. Alright, I'm probably just speaking for me, but you know what? That is the way I want it. Wait, that's not what that song's called. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit the like button. If you want to see more, hit subscribe. And do you even remember Johnny No Name, or am I the only one? Let me know in the comments. Oh, and if you're so inclined to, I do have YouTube memberships open, as well as a Patreon in case you feel like financially supporting these weird deep dives. Links are in the video description, and shout out to those who've already done so. Anyways, thanks again for watching.